Hello and welcome to American Wasp. I am your host, Dieter McBusiness, and I'm going to be doing shows or trying to do shows Thursdays and Mondays at noon. So I will be live on YouTube Mondays and Thursdays at noon, Tuesdays at 6:30 with my main man, StatPat Stateless Patriot for Left Coast Live, and then I'm on this space which I simul stream on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, all times Pacific. All right, so today we got war with Iran, setting back America for probably another decade with respect to foreign policy failures. Israel has been attacking Lebanon, in case you didn't know, and they just recently bombed Beirut, so that's great. And what I'm thinking about calling Israel is savages. I mean, barbarians, right? Like just because they're Israelis doesn't mean they're benign people. The popularity for this war with Iran is 80%. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later. But for now, and then two other small stories. Jim Clyburn, who is 85 and a notorious neoliberal corporate Democrat, is going to be running for an 18th term so that he, his own words, can see the first black Speaker of the House. That's what's important to him, is seeing Hakeem Jeffries become Speaker of the House while he's in the House. For some reason, Jim Clyburn thinks that him being a part of a Congress that has its first black speaker is more important than getting in some fresh new blood, which is actually the priority of a lot of Democratic parties around the country, especially the voters. Oh, and then Trump did something with Jake Paul and endorsed Jake Paul. It's like, who cares? But let's get into two reactions that I want to do. The first is the Latino vote in the Texas primary. I really want to make an effort to understand the Latino vote better. And I think the guy we're about to watch, Chuck Rocha is his name, he is probably the best voice that I have heard with respect to understanding the Latino vote. So let's give Chuck a chance here.
A lot of times, and me and Mike talk about this all the time, Latinos are an afterthought. We get there late. We show up with a message they may or may not like. It's happenstance in the last 10 days during early vote. But all three of the campaigns you described that were huge successes started early, and we showed up and talked to folks about working class issues that they cared about. But the key was the issues, the earliness, and the cultural competency to get it done with three great candidates. I'd like to say James Talarico is really special, and he really connected with Latinos all across the state. You cannot argue with the way that you saw these border counties that me and Mike have been talking about dramatically swinging to the right. Three times outvoted Republicans in their own primary. That was crazy, Mike. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast. We're going to call this the Post-Texas Tornado Podcast. Mike Madrid.
Hell of a week, brother. Hell of a week. How are you feeling? You getting some sleep, or are you like...
Look, the old man on Tuesday night, because we didn't have no results, and I stayed up past midnight. You know how long it's been that I stayed up past midnight with my clothes on?
This is a funny story, because I was doing a podcast live with The Hill, like going over the precinct analysis, and I've got CNN. I'm in New Orleans, by the way. I got to go give a speech in New Orleans. And I'm in my hotel room, and like there's bad, in-room dining, and I'm like going over precinct data, and I'm watching CNN, and I'll be damned if I don't see this black cowboy hat bouncing up right above the chyron, like, and everyone's mobbing you and wants to take pictures of you, and I was great.
I really appreciate that in kind words. And I'll say this about all three of those campaigns. They all had one thing in common. They had amazing staff. They had great managers. They had great Latinos that were actually out talking to folks about the things that you've talked about. That's the through line. Look, I've had a lot of great opportunity to get to work on those races. This week was amazing with James Talarico. Ruben's my boy. I'll never be able to repay Bernie and Jeff for all the flexibility they gave me on that campaign. But there's a few things that they all three have in common. And you talk about actually Mike Madrid a lot. It's the message, it's the delivery,
There you go.
and it's the consistency of talking to people about the shit that they care about.
You gotta listen
That's
to
what it
people,
is.
brother.
It's
Yes.
nothing dramatic. And let me add this. There was a lot of money spent by all three of those guys to actually go talk to Latinos. Not just on the ground, and that happened. Not just in the mailboxes, but that happened. But in Spanish, lots of Univision, lots of sporting events, lots of award shows, and in English, and in digital. What does that all have in common?
Okay, so I hate the cliche meet them where they are, but I understand the idea behind it. This is what Chuck is talking about with Latino voters and having advertisements on TV in Spanish and taking Spanish speaking representatives and surrogates to Latino communities if the candidate can't go himself or herself. So Chuck was, as a Latino himself, has an intimate knowledge of Latino cultures and decided to adapt to the voter, which is great. And something that I think the data reveals is that the Latino vote, as far as all demographic votes go, are the most swingable voters based on race. Based on age, it's Gen Z. But based on race, it's the Latino voters. So it's a fascinating journey right here with this video to understand that segment of the population better, because it's so crucial to the future of being successful in American politics. It's not just on a state level, but on a national level.
A lot of times, and me and Mike talk about this all the time, Latinos are an afterthought. We get there late. We show up with a message they may or may not like. It's happenstance in the last 10 days during early vote. But all three of the campaigns you described that were huge successes started early. And we showed up and talked to folks about working class issues that they cared about. But the key was the issues, the earliness, and the cultural competency to get it done with three great candidates, I'd like to say. James Talarico was really special, and you really connected with Latinos all across the state. You cannot argue with the way that you saw these border counties that me and Mike have been talking about dramatically swinging to the right. 3 times outvoted Republicans in their own primary. That was crazy, Mike.
I gotta say, I was on the phone this morning with my dog, Bobby Polito, who I love.
What in the world is going on?
This guy's one of my favorite candidates. He gets this stuff, and like we'll be talking about messaging, and he just immediately is so instinctive with this guy. He's so of his community. There's nothing, and he's like Talarico. Like that's got to be the point, right? When they figure it out, is that the point, or is this you got to do more?
We will see. You know, again, I love everybody giving me the credit. I'll take the credit, and I love all the folks and all the messages I've got. But there was a lot of staff. The deputy manager of this campaign is a Latina who was from the state of Texas. The field director, the folks that are out in the field doing this work. There was amazing staff on this. The manager put together a team. Lots of folks were like, well, what about this? And what about that? They ran a good operation. They didn't get distracted by polls that showed the opposition up 15 points. And I want you to tell me about that and how that happened. But they didn't get distracted from the plan. Get these numbers, Mike. And this is a first year for the Latino Vote podcast. 28,000 volunteers, 485 community-based events in 6 weeks. 4.7 million peer-to-peer texts from volunteers to other voters in English and in Spanish. Over 100,000 conversations at the door. That don't sound like a lot in Texas, but when it's targeted to communities, that grassroots makes a difference. But the reason Beto O'Rourke lost is that he only did that. Bobby Polito, James Talarico did 2 things. They knocked on the doors, but they ran a shit ton of Spanish ads, a whole bunch of English ads. There's a Univision award show that if you were just an outside buyer, you would never buy this award show. You'd be buying morning news and evening news, Mike, like we've always done.
Right.
But the team came up with the concept. I was there, but this was a team effort. Again, I'm going to always defer to the team. So let's buy a bunch of advertising around this Texas exclusive Spanish language award show about the music industry in Texas. It's listened to broadly on TV, and we bought a lot of advertising there, and we were the only ones there advertising. Same thing with the Mexico-Iceland soccer game. These little nuances matter, and that advertising itself does not make you have this Mexico-Iceland listened to broadly on TV. And we bought a lot of advertising there, and we were the only ones there advertising. Same thing with the Mexico-Iceland soccer game. These little nuances matter, and that advertising itself does not make you have this dramatic effect, but you layer that on the grassroots, on the message, on the delivery. This guy talking about Jesus, talking about working class, talking about not left and right. Then you have the perfect storm, and it starts to look like Ruben Gallego. It starts to sound like Bernie Sanders. It looks like Bobby Polito. Then you start, to your point, seeing a pattern, right?
Clearly. And like I said, it's working. So I'm hoping that those Democrats who listen to the show breathe that in a little bit and start saying, this is it's a trend line. It's not these guys just being cranks on here. Maybe it's Mike Madrid, a little bit cranky, a little bit of a grumpy cat. That's okay.
I usually keep him calm down, and Bobby obviously grounds you.
Yes, but guys, this works. Everything that we're saying this from 35 years of experience of doing campaigns and knowing what moves the needle. And again, as we get to bigger prominence as a community and determining the outcomes of not just the primary voters, by the way, in the Democratic primary, which again, a 60-40 split, which is what it's basically looking like. Latinos broke 60-40 for Talarico. That was the race. That's the ball game. Jasmine Crockett got 83% of the black vote. 83%. Not a surprise. And then Talarico, of course, overperforms with white voters. I think he was sitting at 64%. The difference maker is what we said on the show. We did a special edition before this when you were in town, because we were saying the way this community breaks is going to determine the outcome of the Democratic primary is going to be. That's exactly what happened. 60-40. And here's what I thought was interesting. It was obviously the Rio Grande Valley. This was the Webb County, the Starr County, the Hidalgo counties, where there's some just eye-popping numbers blowing off the charts. These are these districts where everybody was writing all these stories about, going to Trump country by 80% swings over the last 10 years are now have moved away from Republicans dramatically. But it was also happening in Harris County, which is the most populous part of the state, as you taught us, in Houston, the urban core, Hispanic dense precincts. So it's urban Latinos and it's rural Latinos. And now get this, in that same Senate special district that we saw just 10 days ago in that special race outside the Dallas-Burbs and Tarrant County, that's a more suburban, not entirely, but a little bit more suburban than either Harris and Starr County, all breaking towards the Democrat, away from the Republican. 31-point swing in that special election. So what is happening is broad-based and it's deep. It is happening in rural, urban, and suburban communities, Latinos of all generations, of all races and ethnicities. We can go back to early 2025 and the other races that you were doing in New Jersey with Mikey Sherrill. It's Mamdani's race. It's in Miami's mayoral race with Cuban American Latino men, Republican men. It's here in California. We're seeing the same numbers. Latinos are voting monolithically at this moment in time. I mean, everybody's going to say, oh, Latinos aren't monolithic, that same old tired, bullshit. And there's a lot of truth to it. But at this moment in time, I'm going to declare it definitively, Latinos are monolithic. In 2026, we are voting monolithically. Will that change? Perhaps. But walk us through what happened in Texas and some of the aftermath. What was the decision? What was the deciding factors when you knew, okay, we're in a good position? Because you were strutting a little bit. I could see that when we were talking. You felt confident. I know. I've been doing this long enough to know when somebody feels good about the race, when they don't. You felt good going into the.
I did, because as soon as people started voting, and you could see where the vote, and this vote is out. It's just incredible. First day, incredible. Remember last episode when we talked about Tarrant County?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when I teased everybody and told you that 30% of the electorate were non-regular primary voters?
Yeah.
I knew, but I didn't want to say it on the podcast. Those aren't Jasmine Crockett voters.
Right.
Those aren't new black folks showing up. A small percentage of them was. I take nothing away from the Congresswoman. She did the best thing she could do with such a small window of running. But I'll tell you this, is that when I saw 30% were coming in from non-regular voters, when I saw that 12% of the Democratic primary, Mike, had a Republican voting history, I knew that was Tallarico voters. I didn't want to say it here because the other campaigns would have time to react via phones and text messages, right? So that was when I knew we were in a good way. And then as we continued, the pattern just kept escalating, Mike. More voters, more independents, more Republicans, more Latinos than ever had voted. The Valley numbers were off the chart. And I was like, unless I'm misreading this. And when the first ballots dropped that we saw in Texas, it was the in-person early vote numbers. I was like, this is done if she can't have a big number in Dallas and a big number in Houston. And she had big numbers and she won, but they weren't the big as they needed to be. I would tell everybody to Google New York Times Latino vote Tallarico. They've got a great map up by county that shows how Jasmine Crockett won all of these counties in East Texas where I'm from, where most of the minority voters there are all black. There's very few Latinos as far as density goes as there are in Central and West Texas.
Right.
And just like a coloring book, Tallarico wins all those because of the Latino vote.
Mm-hmm.
Mike just said, we delivered this vote for Tallarico, and we did. And it's not because James Tallarico and his campaign just went up on some Spanish ads in the last 2 weeks. That's normally what happens. That's what Jasmine Crockett and her super PAC did, like folks do all the time. Again, that's not a bad strategy. It's just proven to be stale and not work. Tallarico starts earlier. And he does it over cross channels, not just Univision, but then digital and other things. But it's more than that, to Mike's point. And I give Mike shit about this, and he's right. The perfect thing is when you have the message that Mike Madrid talks about, but you do it over a long enough period of time to a broad sector of voters. We have micro-targeted ourselves down to almost not talking to anybody. You got to open up that spigot, and that was one of the big things that Tallarico did, is have this broader stroke. Now, it helps, and I know we have privilege to have some money and to raise $2.5 million from that CBS interview that didn't get aired. But here's the difference and the behind the scenes that I can give you. I can pick up the phone and call the manager and call James Tallarico and go, we just got $3 million. Here's how we expand the targets on the Latino advertising because we can see that it's working. And now we can see it in our polls that it's working. Let's expand it. And they're like, yes, Chuck, let's do that. And let's send me the things where we can expand it and do the award show and the soccer games. If there's not a Latino or somebody else in that room, I'm not saying they would have figured that out, but that would have just went towards buying some more TV, which is not a bad strategy. And this is no knock on the campaign. They were amazing. And the team was amazing. But that's the difference in the nuance of being nimble on your feet when something like that happens, Mike.
And that's the future of campaigns. And I mean, you and I are obviously frustrated because we've been saying this for many, many years. The good news is they are finally kind of figuring it out. I think that is good news. It's a little bit late for, guys, I wish I was in my 20s because you and I have been saying this since we were in our 20s. And we would have a very different country right now. We'd have a very different Latino politics than we have right now. The Republican and Democratic parties would be very different if they'd been listening, but they haven't. But here we are, right? These politicians they're lagging indicators. They're going to listen to everything else. They're going to listen to the party first until Latino candidates or candidates who actually understand this stuff get it and drive it. We've had Ruben on the show, Ruben Gallego. You've talked about Ruben where he would tell his consultants.
People should know that this Bobby Polito number was big. And what you don't know unless you're a nerd is that the woman who ran against Bobby from the left spent $1.2 million in this primary. I bet Bobby didn't spend but $200,000 or $300,000 and just stayed consistently on his message. He ran some ads. He didn't want to spend all of his money in the primary. But this woman is when we get all, and I know it'll take a minute, so stop. But when we have this June primary in California, it'll be interesting to see, is this turnout phenomenon in Texas reciprocal to a Democratic run state in California? Because the Republicans run everything in Texas.
Yeah.
Democrats are pissed for the first time in 20 years. More Democrats voted in the primary than ever had in the Republican primary. That don't happen.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen with this contested governor's race? And does it degen up turnout? Are people just as pissed at Trump in California, even though the Democrats control that? So that'll be interesting to watch, just like this runoff in the Republican side.
So that's pretty much the big question. Is the Latino vote going to show up in the Democratic Party primary in California, which is in June 3rd, I believe, is what he said. And I think it is. I think the Latino vote has flipped big time. They feel betrayed. Those of them that went with the Republicans in 2024. And I think also there's a big portion of the Latino population that didn't go with the Republicans in 2024. So you flop that 20%, you're going to have a big positive number out of the Latino vote, I think, for the governor's race. So it'll be interesting to see if any of the governor's race nominees for California end up making that play for the Latino vote. I'd like to see them try.
Trump comes out and endorses Cornyn. Paxton said today that he'd drop out if we pass the SAVE Act or some shit like that. Like, it's going to be crazy. We're going to have a lot to talk about on this podcast. But two more points really quick.
Yeah.
One to this Houston point about Tallarico. For those of you at home are like, how do you know these people in Houston voted for Tallarico? Well, some important people, for all of you, could watch on Twitter live. Folks were putting up heat maps of where the most dense populations of Latinos, Black folks, and Asians lived in Houston. Some of these precincts are 80 and 90% either Asian, Latino, or Black. There's communities there. They live there. And then you can look at the results, and literally they results over the density of Black and Latinos. And Jasmine Crockett won all the Black precincts, and Tallarico wins all of the Latino precincts, just like clockwork.
Right.
And in 10 precincts in Houston live more people than 2 counties in the Valley, in just 10 precincts, because they're stacked on top of each other.
Right.
And in the Valley, they live all up and down these country roads. They're just not as dense. We talk about the Valley, but again, to Mike's point, it's only 8% of the population, like the Central Valley, that Mike talks about. And then the second point I want to bring up really quickly is I want to give you, Mike, the results from that Texas 33 race that we've been talking about. That was the Julie Johnson, Colin Allred.
Yeah.
In Texas, you got to win 50% of the vote to go to a runoff. And here are the results. Colin Allred wins with 44% and gets 31,000 votes. Julie Johnson gets 23,000 votes and gets 33%. Carlos Quintanilla gets 10,000 votes and 14% and does not spend a nickel.
Wow. There you go.
Wait, there's a Democratic Socialist running in the 4th place who got 6,000 votes and got 9% of the vote. So you can see now how
What's that
Latinos...
candidate's name?
Which one?
The DSA candidate.
His name is Zishas Haviz. I think he's Middle Eastern, some kind of like, I can't never do those names very good, but it's Zeeshan. Zishan?
Why? Yeah, don't say I don't know.
Hafez. But he didn't spend any money, but he was DSA and he gave Julie Johnson and all red shit for taking AIPAC money and blah, blah, blah. But the kicker for this was the Latino who spent nothing.
Well, that's not blah, blah, blah. If you take AIPAC money, you are going to be DQ'd in 2028. Mark my words.
14% of the vote.
Yeah.
So now there's going to be this big test. Where do those Latinos go?
Yeah,
Do they go to Judy Johnson? Like this is going to continue now for 65 more days because that's how long it is to run off in this.
And
thing.
Colin Allred, I mean, I'm going to say it. I'm sure I'll get busted, but I don't care. I'm not, in your party, and I don't make my living there. But Colin Allred was the one who was slapping down that card, saying, people of color got to vote together and stick together. And I'm like, man, brother, you do not understand Latino voters, and it's disrespectful to be talking like that. You want to talk about poor people, broke people, working class people? You want to talk about that? Absolutely, but don't be injecting this racial politics. Like, when is the Democratic Party going to stop with that shit? Like, it's got to stop. Get past it. And I'm not saying that there aren't systemic problems. I believe that there's systemic racism. I will fight against that all day long, and I will stand arm in arm against that all day long. But do not equate the experience of Latino voters with Black or white voters, right? I was getting rational shit. Maybe you were too, saying, "Oh, there it is. There's racist, misogynist Latino voters. Once again, they won't vote for a Black woman." And I'm so tired of the mentality. And you know me, brother. I am petty. I will take on those fights because I'm also not afraid to go at, especially these activists who have this really narrow understanding of human behavior. And I'm also not afraid of Black voices. Like, that's a Democratic thing. Everyone's afraid to say that maybe that's not true. If it ain't true, I don't care who you are. I'm going to say that's not true. And if you want to back it up with data and evidence, I will have my mind change. But I'm so tired of everybody saying, "Oh, Latinos are racist and misogynist." Like, that alone is racist. That message right there is racist in and of itself. Who was the top vote-getting Democrat of all time for president of the United States? Barack Obama, a Black man, by the way. Who was second? Hillary Clinton, a woman, by the way. Oh, well, maybe it's a Black and a woman that makes us racist and misogynist. How do you explain Kamala Harris's whole damn career in California, dramatically overperforming with Latino voters? Like, as long as they're voting the way you want them to vote, everything is okay. But once they say, no, maybe you did fail on the economy, maybe things are getting worse, maybe I am going to hold you accountable, maybe you are too partisan, then suddenly I'm a racist and I'm a misogynist voter. That type of politics is going to kill the Democratic Party.
We're going to keep you posted on on Texas 33, Julie Johnson, Colin Allred.
The only thing I would edit based on what he just said is the partisanship part, because partisanship is going to be the methodology to approach national politics for the next 40 years if we're going to recover from MAGA trash fascism.
Red in a runoff, there'll just be 2 of those. And that Latino vote, again, will make a difference. There's not a doubt in my mind that Colin Allred won. He benefited from the jacked up Black turnout in Dallas, as it should. That's Jasmine Crockett's backyard. There was a ton of people that showed up to vote, and you get the repercussions of that, and that's why we have a democracy. They have every right to vote, and good for them. And Judy Johnson, there's no doubt, won a giant part of the Latino population and a lot of the white population and some of the Black, by the way. And so when it's just them 2, the 14% that the Latino candidate got is going to be the winning.
No, the answer is Eric Swalwell, who's running. Now, they're not huge numbers. It's 9%, and then the second one, I think, is Katie Porter.
I'm glad we marked this. California, I'm going to show you guys the polls real quick. This is Emerson. Swalwell is in the lead with 25% undecided, though. So there's a lot of different scenarios. But we got Swalwell, Hilton, Bianco, who are the 2 Republicans. Then you got Steyer, Porter, and Villagrosa, Becerra, and then a huge amount of undecideds. So Swalwell's grown from, I'll zoom in on this, Swalwell's grown from 12 to 17% in the last 3 months, 3.5 months. Swalwell's grown from 12 to 17%. Hilton and Bianco, who cares? The most important thing to know about this election is that the top two vote getters go to the general election regardless of party. So you could conceivably have two Republicans running against each other for governor. But now I think people are trying to rally around Swalwell, who is unfortunately a neoliberal corporate Democrat. But there is, my guy in this one is Tom Steyer, even though he's a billionaire. I got a soft spot for Steyer. I know some people who have worked for him. He's a good guy. He still won't say Israel's committing genocide, which is unfortunate. But it'd be cool if he could have some sort of late surge here. Katie Porter is not my vibe. She has been decreasing, it looks like, from 11% to 8% in the last 3.5 months, while Steyer's been going up. And then Villarosa and Becerra, they got to drop out and endorse someone. This is a waste of time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a good number for this primary. So Villarosa and Becerra really should get out of the way sometime soon, with about 3 months left to go in this race. So anyway, that's that with the California latest polls. Back to the Latino vote real quick. We'll wrap this up soon.
Order. And then it's like Tom Steyer, then it's Javier Becerra, then Tom Steyer, then Antonio.
I stepped on your lead. So the lead is that who was number one?
Eric Swalwell.
Good.
Yeah.
I like Eric.
Yeah, Eric's a good guy. But the point is, first of all, they're very low numbers. He's sitting in the number one position, but it's at like 9%.
Nobody's advertised.
No one's even out there. No one's even engaged. And that's kind of the message, is everyone kind of thinks, all this political chattering class, like, oh, this is all going to be Becerra and Antonio fighting for the Latino vote. They're not even in the top two amongst Democrats. But they're going to have to fight and compete for their own votes too. It's just not a Hispanic surname, just not a Latino last name. Is going to give you an automatic following in the Latino community, especially with a younger Latino demographic that don't know who Javier Becerra was. Like, they don't even know there is a Health and Human Services Department of which he was a cabinet secretary, or the Attorney General. They can't name who the current Attorney General is, and they certainly can't name the mayor of Los Angeles 15, 16, 18 years ago. And I know them both, and they're both fine fellows. It's not personal for all you Becerra and Antonio fans out there, because I know there's a lot of them. I helped ran as a senior advisor to Antonio's campaign for governor in 2018. He's a dear friend. I love him like a father, but math is what math is, and sometimes the math don't math. And right now it's not mathing, but it's teaching us something, Chuck, and that's the point I want to bring up is the Latino vote is changing. You don't just get 80% like a Jasmine Crockett does because you're a black candidate. That's not the way Latinos vote. That's not the way we make voting decisions. Does it give you an advantage? I believe it does. I think it gives you an opening, an ear to be listened to. But when Swalwell and Porter are beating Becerra and Villarosa, you have to listen to that data point. You may not like it, especially those Democrat consultants that are going to be shocked by this. But good, you should be shocked. Wake up. You're going to have a message that resonates and words and tactics to back it up to win our vote. And I'm proud of that. I think that's fantastic, because it means, I think, finally Democrats aren't going to just be like, oh, we're going to just knee-jerk get these votes. No, you get traction, you get support, you get what Bernie got and Rubin got and Tallarico got. When you put a good strategy and good policy and good tactics together, the result.
Okay, guys, real quick. Bad news. Eric Swalwell took $1 million from AIPAC over the course of his career. Not good news. So the front runner for California governor has AIPAC money in his system, which is not a good thing. So I'm still hopeful about Tom Steyer, but I got a soft spot for benevolent billionaires insofar as there are any. Lily B, 68, being a Latino, I would, yes, the dumbasses in my family that bought his line of shit realized no, they were had. Yeah, I think talking about flipping the Latino vote seems to be the most flippable ethnic demographic, the generational demographic that is most easily persuaded, or at least influenced. It would be the Gen Z generation. Tallarico is funded by the same person who funds the Republican Party, specifically MAGA. You're on your own, Latinos. Yeah, so I'm worried about the Adelson money too, and that's why I say Tallarico isn't a true progressive. But we'll see what he does in office. I think he could be a good soldier that does what he's told to do by people who are more progressive than he is and understand it better. You have to remember, Tallarico is like 38. Like, that's still pretty young to be running for national office when you've only held state office. So, especially for Senate in Texas, which is a huge office. All right, back to Latino vote.
Let's follow that. But without that, you don't just get it because of the sound of your last name.
That's true. And, people know Eric, and they know that he has been taking on Trump. And right now in this environment, they like somebody who talks about taking on Trump. Yeah. That's why they like Tallarico. Different styles than Jasmine. But Swalwell's been taking him on. And I've gotten to know Eric. I don't know Katie Porter at all, but Swalwell's a good friend with Rubin. And Rubin and Swalwell came in together. They started this Young Guns caucus, and they've both been out there like leading the charge to fight back on Trump, and a lot of work.
All right. So safe to say these guys are great. but they don't understand the problem with APAC money. And Eric Swalwell, like I said earlier, like I showed you earlier, took $1 million from APAC over the course of his career. So love these guys. They're very insightful on the Latino vote, but they don't understand how toxic APAC money is right now within the circles of the progressive left.
Class shit that folks gravitate to. It's going to be interesting to watch this race as it develops. As you've talked about, we talked about with the poster from that big polling firm and outfit that does like 30,000 samples that you said is the bedrock. What are they called?
Oh, Pew Research.
Pew. When the guy on Pew, when I was over in the overseas listening to the podcast, and he was talking about how the second and third generation Latinos are they're just different than these original immigrants who were dyed-in-the-wool Democrats. Correct. There's a whole different opening because these folks are true swing voters and they know Swalwell. They have no idea who Javier Becerra is.
That's exactly it. And that, I don't know why that threatens people. Like, it's a good thing for our community.
Yeah,
this is an interesting point. Latino Mafune, there is a lack of, thank you for watching, by the way, there's a lack of trust regarding both parties among most Latinos. Fire up the chat, by the way, guys, if there's certain things you want me to talk about. Yeah, it seems to be the case based on the numbers. The Latinos seem like they're okay, especially second and third generation, with voting Republican, which I think is a surprise to a lot of born and bred Democrats. But as you know, if you've watched my channel, I am not a born and bred Democrat. I like to learn about things, so that's why I'm watching these guys. And they're saying what you're seeing, Latino Mafune. So thank you for watching and firing up the chat. Let's finish these guys out.
Make them work. Make both parties work for the vote.
Yes.
Right?
When everybody's working for the vote, we get results. When nobody does, you don't get results. And that's the difference. It may upset you as a political activist. It may upset you as a staffer. It probably really chaps your hide, if I can steal a Texas term. If you're elected,
chap your ass.
Chap your ass, excuse me. If you're a Latino politician, it probably bothers you. But that is so good for our community. It's like, it's great that you understand my culture. It's great that you're from my barrio. But if you're not going to fight for the issues that our community is telling us, what good are you?
Exactly. Before we go, because we want to do a quick episode post the production here after the Texas primary, I wanted to let you know, Mike, I got you. If you'll notice behind me, that Talarico sign, I got you one at the house. I brought you one back like that to put on the wall.
Is
you
it signed?
should know.
Is it signed?
It's not signed, but I can get it signed. Mine's not signed either.
Signed, autographed.
I can get you that. You should know when these are rally signs. Yep. And that Talarico sign, you have at the rally and you're waving it at Talarico to show him you're with him. And the cameras are behind you. Guess what's on the back of that Talarico sign? Huh. Look next to the Robio sign here with Ruben. It says, the back of the sign says, love your neighbor.
That's beautiful.
First time I've ever seen a rally sign that a candidate gave up his name to be on the back to send a message to people. Again, something a little different. Doesn't mean everything to anybody, but it's just different, Mike.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's different. Now, what I really think was the sleeper issue that worked for Talarico that no one is talking about. You want to know what it is?
Tell me.
Black T-shirts.
What?
Yeah.
The black T-shirts? You are a big black T-shirt fan.
People love them, man. I've seen the black T-shirts, Talarico for Texas.
Latino Mafune, again, thank you for chatting. People forget that among Latino immigrants, if they were fascist prior to crossing the border, they would most likely remain fascist after immigrating. Well, I don't know what percentage of the Latino population is fascist. I imagine it's pretty small, I would hope. But yeah, for those that were fascist before they crossed the border, they're more than likely going to stay that way. People don't usually change after they're 24 ideologically unless they are influenced by certain variables.
It's a good look. It's a good look.
Hey, we call it a Mike Madrid tuxedo on the podcast. Now, look, if y'all ain't on the YouTube, you're not even going to see the sign behind me or see the black T-shirt that I think Mike just watches every night in the sink.
It's the same
You've got to be subscribed to the YouTube channel if you want to see us. And I promise you, I'm worth looking at. And you can cover Mike's side of the thing with a piece of paper if you need to, but you should be subscribed to the YouTube.
Give him all the kudos. This is his moment. He deserves it. He deserves that recognition. We don't get recognized enough in this business, so I'm not going to take anything away from you. I love seeing you getting the kudos and the respect and the accolades that you deserve. There was one other comment that somebody had mentioned, which is we don't have enough women on this show. So I want to make a commitment to get.
All right, here we go. So we're going to move on from those guys. Thank you very much. The Latino Vote on YouTube. Check them out. This is Sam Seder on the left hook with Wahajat Ali. And they're going to talk about what's wrong with the Democratic Party. These are two really smart guys, and I've been looking forward to watching this. So I have not seen this. I'll put it at 1.5 speed so it doesn't take as long to get through, just like I did with the last video.
All right. That, in fact, Iran is going to dictate when this ends.
Yeah.
Sam, let's start with this war in Iran. This war is very unpopular. This war and support for Israel is very unpopular. Supporting AIPAC now is unpopular. Sam, can you please explain why the Democratic establishment refuses to meet its own base when it comes to support for this war and support for AIPAC in Israel?
Yeah, because they disagree with us. I mean, that's ultimately comes down. Like, just about 20 minutes ago, it was reported that there are reports now that Iran is mining the Straits of Hormuz. And I spoke today on the program with Professor Juan Cole, and this has become sort of clear over the past couple of days. I mean, aside from the fact that there's a whole host of reasons not to support a war, period, and particularly a war with Iran, moral, material, etc. But this was so stupid. I mean, clearly the Trump administration had no idea what they were doing. And we're now at the point where, as much as Trump has been trying to sort of over the past couple of days, I'm sure you've seen it, like give himself an off ramp, right? Like on Friday, Callan Levitt said the president will decide when they've unconditionally surrendered, regardless of what Iran says. It is now becoming apparent that, in fact, Iran is going to dictate when this ends.
Yep.
It is incumbent upon them to punish the United States and Israel and the world as much as they can so that this doesn't happen to them again, because, of course, they don't have a nuclear weapon, so they have no deterrent capacity in that regard. But this is one of those situations where, like, you stick a stick in a hornet's nest, and they're going to come and bite you in such a way that you're not going to go by that hornet's nest again. And that we appear, I think this week is when we're starting to move into that phase of realization. If Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries had, from the very beginning, said no war in Iran, which is exactly what they did not say. Even yesterday, what they said originally was like, you're not coming to Congress. We don't know the justification. You have got a lot of explaining to do to the American public. Yesterday, on the floor of the House, the Senate rather, Chuck Schumer was saying, maybe it was this morning actually, he's like, they're all over the map. There's a lot of contradictions. Last night, Trump says the war is going to end, and 12 hours later, Hegseth says, no, it's just beginning. Which one is it? And, that is a relevant thing for someone like you or I to say, who are doing sort of like commentary, right? Like we're analyzing these things. And it's a second order issue. The first order issue is no war. You don't have a right. This is illegal. This is stupid. There's no purpose for it. It's a war of choice. End this war now. But Chuck Schumer has, for certainly the time that he has been majority leader, but really throughout his career, has articulated multiple occasions that his job, he sees it as Senate Majority Leader, he mistakenly said the other day, but also Senate Minority Leader, is to protect Israel.
Said it first week of February, Sam.
He says it all the time. And he is also one of the few Democrats who voted against the Iran nuke deal under Obama years ago, because he does not want...
That's Schumer right now.
That's Schumer.
Sam,
give me 1 second.
Sam, this is not fair, Sam.
He's mad at me, but I'll get it later. So the reason why, and just, again, there's many reasons to be against this war, but from a sheer political standpoint, Donald Trump, the Republicans are going to lose the House. I mean, I think that, like, and this assuming that all of the things that Trump is going to be doing between now and the election don't inhibit the ability for people to vote. He's going to lose the House. There's an opportunity to win the Senate. But what we're going to go through in this country when the oil shocks start to hit, and they're going to hit,
absolutely,
we're going to have serious problems in terms of like gasoline prices, maybe even gasoline availability. We're going to have serious problems in terms of food prices, because a huge component of the world's fertilizer comes out of the Strait of Hormuz. And this country, over the course of the summer in particular, it's probably going to take about, you're already seeing gas prices already shoot through the roof, but it's going to get more aggressive, because Iran is going to make sure that we American citizens feel like they don't need to come here and bomb us.
No, they're going to gouge us.
They're going to gouge us. They're going to make us pay an economic price. And imagine a world where the Democratic leadership from day one was saying, don't do this. Do not do this. The Republicans, every one of those, imagine if Hakeem Jeffries had said, I'm going to whip this vote, and I'm not going to allow for backbenching Democrats to go and vote against the Democratic Party for the War Powers Act. I mean, imagine if Chuck Schumer was one of the 5 senators now who are basically saying, we're going to stop everything in the Senate to have hearings and call Republicans to. I mean, we have a Senate leader who is a drag on everything the Democratic Party is trying to do right now. And that is just, it's almost incomprehensible. I mean, never mind a guy who's ineffectual. He is literally working against the best interests of the Democratic Party right now.
And I'm so glad you mentioned it, because I was very vigilant in looking at the initial responses of Jeffries and Schumer 10 days ago, because I was paying attention, Sam, to the fact that reporting suggested that Democratic leadership was working behind the scenes to actually kill Massey and Khanna's war powers resolution. I know there's a lot of news, folks, so let me just remind you, always try to bring the receipts, that literally a few days before the war, Massey and Khanna, seeing the buildup, seeing the rah-rah-rah, fearing the fact that the United States would join Israel in this disastrous war, they were trying to pass a resolution that would have every single elected official publicly vote whether or not they supported this war. So I would think, looking at the data, looking at your base, looking at the polls,
Wouldn't
the
be
fact that the only
surprised.
thing that is more, I don't know, unpopular right now than this war is essentially what's tied. It's the Americans want. There's three things that Americans agree on right now, Sam. About 70-80% of Americans. They're against this war. They're against AI data centers in their backyard, and also they want the release of the Epstein files. So you look at that data, and you look at the fact that your base is moving away from AIPAC and Netanyahu and Israel, and you know internally the data shows that genocide in Gaza was the main reason, not the only reason, the main reason why
So
Democrats.
I would replace those three things with abolish ICE, abolish APAC, and I'll think of it in a second.
Home. So what they did, folks, was according to credible reporting, Jeffries and Schumer worked behind the scenes to kill that vote, right? And then
prosecute MAGA and end foreign wars. No more interventionism.
you saw Donald Trump make the announcement, imminent threat, I had to strike. You saw, Tim Kaine came out, gave a very good response. You got Van Hollen, you got other people saying this is illegal, this is a wrong war. I read Jeffries and Schumer's response. None of that language is there, Sam.
None.
Even now, 10 days later, none of that language.
None.
It's all about Khamenei was terrible and he was bad. I'm like, yeah. So what it seemed to me, Sam, was they said, how come you didn't include us, man?
100%. I mean, Schumer knows this is Schumer thinking he is playing some type of multidimensional chess. He is getting his cake, he thinks, and eating it too. But the fact of the matter, because he wanted this attack on Iran. I mean, he wanted it. There's no doubt about it. He knows he can't come out and say that explicitly. But who does he think?
Sorry for saying this. It's tough to hear, I know. But Zionism is fascism, y'all. Just like conservatism is fascism. And there's nothing wrong with hating fascism.
I think he's fooling. We all can assess now, like, what it means to complain about process versus what you're actually doing. And he's not fooling anybody. Everybody can see this. And it's costing, there is a obvious missed opportunity. And it could very well be the absence of that in his sort of literally being a drag on the Democratic chances to take over the Senate. I mean, the guy is both inept and...
Fire up the chat. I'm concerned about how the U.S. will be able to repair relationships with the rest of the world post-Trump if the Republicans are held criminally accountable. I think it'll help if we hold them criminally accountable, because it'd be like, these people were huge mistakes to put into leadership, and we're sorry. Yeah, conservatism does equal white Christian nationalism. I would actually reverse that and say all white Christian nationalists are conservative, but not all conservatives are white Christian nationalists. You got to remember, guys, there's still a lot of anti-MAGA conservatives out there that are not going to change their ways. They're still going to vote Republican. Once it's not Trump, they're going to be like, oh, well, it's not Trump. We're moving on as a party. I guarantee you that's what they're going to say, because I know them. It's in my blood, as I say on my show. I have conservatism in my blood. I feel it. I know exactly what they're going to feel and how they're going to respond to certain things. Like the Epstein files, for example. I knew, it's like, if you've studied narcissism, you know that narcissists just act like nothing happened when something did happen, whether it be a fight or a huge disagreement, yelled at each other, someone threw a bottle across the room, whatever, okay? That's what narcissists do, is they act like nothing happened. Well, that's the same deal there.
And I'm saying in the comments, like, he's being paid. No, this is what he believes. I mean, it's like, we can do him the grace of, like, this is his ideology, and it is a
okay.
It is a decrepit.
But we are the biggest, not just the biggest bully on the block, we're the biggest consumer on the block. So it's in their economic best interest to reconnect with the United States and have normal economic ties to us. It leads to more prosperity for their countries. But we're going to have to prove to them that we can keep Republicans out of office. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a good point. J.D. Vance or Pete Hegseth will be the next GOP candidate. Not Pete Hegseth. Either J.D. Vance or someone else. I can't remember the name of. Who the hell? I'll think of it in a second.
One, and it is one. And here's the other thing. Harry Reid, I'm sure you remember the last Senate leader we had in the Democratic Party. Harry Reid, from Nevada, Mormon. He did not believe in abortion. He subsumed those things for the greater good of the Democratic Party. He personally had personal feelings about abortion, and frankly, like, I am perfectly fine with someone having some religious convictions that they say for their world of religion and don't impose on the public. And
so this is actually something I'm going to be putting into an essay. When you're talking to someone and they invoke religion when you're discussing politics, the response you should give them is, if you can't find a secular way to communicate your perspective on this issue, I have no respect for your perspective. If you have to put it in religious terms and keep it in religious terms, then I really don't respect your understanding of this particular issue, right? It's okay for them to have religious perspectives to start, but they have to extrapolate those religious perspectives into secular perspectives. Otherwise, they're intellectually invalid, because anything that's just based on religion doesn't really mean much. And when you, given the history of religion and given the burdens that history has put on humanity over the last 10,000 years.
For him, Social Security was a major component, and this guy was a fighter. And Chuck Schumer
Yeah,
is
that's what it
multiple
seems like.
occasions saying that my job is either to make sure that the left is supportive of Israel and make sure that Israel gets everything it needs. And the fact of the matter is now it's actually in direct contradiction and in direct opposition to the best interests of the Democratic Party. And look, I'm not I don't identify as a Democrat in the sense that this allegiance is so relevant to me. It is a vehicle to get policies like the ones we've seen in the past, frankly, from the Democratic Party, FDR and whatnot, to get these back into our society. And his work is cutting against all of it. He's ineffective in certain instances, but then in some instances, literally just like a ballast against the Democrats moving forward. I mean, it's shocking.
But this is why, and so that was a great rundown of Schumer. And to me, maybe this is what the Democratic leadership wants the Democratic Party to be. Because based on what you just said, talking about Schumer, and even Jeffries, right? The fact that they're still taking money from AIPAC, bundling money from AIPAC, laundering it against progressive candidates. I'm sure you saw that clip with me and Jeffries on AIPAC and also ICE. Right now, folks, as of last week, 50%. This is without Democratic leadership messaging. 50% of Americans are for abolish ICE. Imagine if they actually led. I guarantee that number would be 60%. But maybe, Sam, this is who the Democratic leadership wants the Democrats to be. In the sense that what I kept saying is, and tell me if I'm being too harsh, I've never seen political leadership, I'm not saying all Democrats, folks, hold their base with more contempt that this current leadership seems to hold their base with contempt. They use liberal and progressive as a pejorative. They use leftist as a pejorative. They're misaligned with their base when it comes to AIPAC, when it comes to
I don't agree with that. I think they use progressive as a pejorative, but not liberal.
Israel, when it comes to the war.
Because if you watch my show, you know that there is no real liberal anymore. There is progressive, and then there's neoliberal.
When it comes to corporate money, when it comes to AI. And then when we say change, they say shut up, shut your mouth. And then they go out of their way to throw the Mamdanis under the bus, the Ilhan Omars under the bus. So with leadership like this, how can the Democratic Party move forward? Because like you said, it's almost like deliberately they're weighing the party down. I mean, just look at what they did with Mamdani. They went all out against Mamdani for Cuomo. And even now,
which is one of the all-time embarrassments for the Democratic Party establishment. The fact that they couldn't do any better than Cuomo for that election, that's who they put up as their front runner. Come on, give me a break. Street Beater 07, I don't hate anyone, but I'm so tired of Israel and the Zionists' supposed rapture and return of their Messiah. Are the two objectives even aligned? Who cares? Yeah, fuck their religious views. I mean, if you are leading with religion to inform your politics when you're talking to me, you got a seriously steep uphill battle to earning my respect. And that's one thing I hope you guys watching are understanding about the current climate, is that it's about respect. Never forgive, never forget, never respect ever again. Okay? Do you respect a child throwing a temper tantrum? Of course not. That's what the Republican Party is. That's what MAGA
to my
trash
knowledge,
are.
still has not endorsed Mamdani. He didn't endorse him when he was the Democratic nominee. He certainly didn't vote for him. And I mean, look, there has always been a hostility by Democratic leadership to the base. Obama, who mobilized people in a way that we hadn't seen in ages, his campaign, when he got the nomination, his campaign basically told all outside groups, or told all donors, you don't give to outside groups, you give to only us. He took Obama for America, which was this massive sort of like grassroots organization, and essentially defanged it so that these grassroots networking could not in any way organize against whatever he was doing. Rahm Emanuel, his chief of staff, was famous for saying "F the left." I mean, they are effing our words. I mean, he was quite vocal in his hostility towards the base. And this supposedly was going to give Obama room. And in 2010, in the run-up to the 2010 midterms, Obama said, I got you. And the Democrats got completely wiped out. And we lost 1,000 state-wide offices during the years of the Obama administration because Obama worked for Obama, but he did not build a party. They were not listening to anything that was happening on the ground.
It's a fair criticism of Obama that he did not spread the love like he tried to do with the ACA in an electoral sense. He did not set up the Democratic Party for long-term success after he was gone. And like Sam just said, they lost like 100 or 1,000 seats on a state legislature level, something like that. over the Obama years. I didn't even know that. That's amazing. And yeah, I hadn't thought about it a long time, but in terms of the way Obama managed the flow of money into the Democratic Party, probably thanks to Rahm Emanuel, it was pretty restrictive towards the grassroots initiatives that Obama inspired, which is really tragic.
And so, we went through the wilderness for about 4, 5, 6 years. Where's the candidates for their governor in the state? Well, it's because the Secretary of State lost under Obama, or, some town councilman left politics, or, some state senator. So there's always been this hostility. But let's be clear. We're not just talking about the base now. Okay? Like, they can make an argument that the base doesn't know. They, listen, the groups, we shouldn't listen to the groups. They're making us choose on popular positions, et cetera, et cetera. This war is already less popular than Iraq ever was. Ever. And just on its beginning, that's before a single U.S. serviceman dies. That's before oil shoots up to $5 a gallon at the gas stations. That's before there's any problems in regards to food supplies, et cetera, et cetera. This is a no-brainer from a political standpoint. Just an absolute no-brainer. The Gaza stuff, look, it was apparent there was going to be first-order effects to Gaza from the voting.
Okay, so Obama acted like collaborating with Republicans was more important than having governance that responsive to public's needs. This is where I wish I was an advisor within the Obama administration at the time, because I would have told him that Republicans are just going to obstruct. They're just going to make sure you're the worst possible president that has happened since before Bill Clinton, since Jimmy Carter. And that's what they did. They obstructed. Street Beater 07, he should have been more direct and intentional instead of preaching to the reps to try and win them over. It was never going to happen. Yeah, he could have used the power of his celebrity to really go and win and sustain political power within Congress. But they didn't have something big to hang their hat on. The ACA, all the ACA really did was incorporate pre-existing conditions into healthcare coverage. That was the big contribution it made. Other than that, it just required people to get healthcare through this system. And it was more affordable, but it still was provided by mostly private health insurance. So, building on Obamacare is great, but I'd actually rather see just a completely new system akin to what they got in Northern Europe.
Standpoint. And the Harris campaign, and you may have had the same experience. The people I knew who run advocacy organizations, who run organizations that support Democrats, that get out the vote, they were all telling me the same thing, that there are people going to vote for Harris, but they became so demoralized that the idea that they're going to knock on, I'm doing an extra 100 door knocks today, it was not happening. And the Harris people, it was reported, they were getting their feedback. If you go out, if you've ever done canvassing, for your audience, if you've ever done canvassing, you get they'll have various different softwares that work depending on the candidate, et cetera, et cetera. And they'll ask you for feedback. Part of the reason actually why Hillary Clinton lost was that they didn't have enough people to canvass, and they assumed they went by algorithmic models, and they were so wrong. They ended up on Get Out the Vote in the days leading up to the election. In places like Pennsylvania, they're knocking on 1 out of every 4 doors they're knocking on is a Trump voter, and that's not what you're supposed to be doing that last week. That last week, you're supposed to be knocking on 98% of the doors you're knocking on are your voters. Well, Harris, when she was getting, her campaign was getting feedback, I knocked on this door, their number one issue is Gaza. They stopped recording it. They said, we no longer are going to accept that as an option in terms of feedback because they didn't want to know. And the Democratic Party, you saw it, Gavin Newsom went from 3 months ago, asked a question about AIPAC and implied, I think it was Van Lathan, implied like, are you being anti-Semitic? To just the other day with the Pod Save guys, he's like, oh, it's definitely an apartheid state. That's a function of Gavin Newsom. People can make their own assessments about whether they can trust a guy like that. But the point being,
I will say no. From California, no.
Well, I will say from New York also no, but we'll have plenty of time to litigate that. But the point being that this guy, who is only going to align and take the safest positions he can take, already sees the writing on the wall. The problem is that Chuck Schumer, I think. Did you ever see that movie Bulworth?
Yes, I remember.
Okay, this is a reverse Bulworth.
Warren Beatty.
Yes, this is a reverse Bulworth. I think Chuck Schumer knows that he's not going to run for re-election in 2028, and I think that when, regardless of who wins the Senate races, more than likely, every one of those Senate wins, they're going to come in that were contested, are people that Chuck Schumer did not choose, right? Like Haley Stevens was his candidate in Michigan. She's not going to win.
You don't think he's going to win?
No, I hope that it's Abdul Al-Sayed, but it may be Malin McMorrow, but they were not chosen. In Maine, it's going to be Plattner. The polls, it's over. And these people are not going to be supportive of Schumer. And Schumer's going to basically say, let me be majority leader, and I'm going to retire in 2 years. Let me be majority leader to them. This is a reverse Bulworth. He doesn't care.
But they know he doesn't care. They know he's an albatross. They know he's sinking the party. They know he's killing momentum. Yet still they have. And I would say, Jeffrey,
here's the problem.
I say
Chuck Schumer and Jim Clyburn, like I talked about earlier, are cut from the same cloth. They are baby boomer neoliberals, and they are just products of the system. They are the personifications of what's wrong with the Democratic Party. They take care of the donor class. They do not take care of the working class voters. They have really hurt the party. Jim Clyburn, as well as Chuck Schumer, and throw in Hakeem Jeffries there, and among others. Yeah, by the way, fresh news: Cory Booker has got a challenger in New Jersey, so that's exciting. People should be thrilled about that. How do we get rid of Schumer, Jeffries, and Clyburn? I think in 2028, there's going to be somewhere between a 30 to 60% overturn within the Democratic Party by way of Democratic Party primaries. One of my core messages on this channel is that you vote twice in even years in America, not just once, meaning we got to have better turnout for Democratic Party primaries. And me specifically, I'm trying to make the DSA the real gatekeeper of those Democratic Party primaries, which I think there's a chance of that happening over the course of the next 2-3 election cycles. Latino Mafune Obamacare was created by the same heritage. Yes, that it was actually Romney Care. And that's what makes it even more pathetic. Let's get back to it with these guys. Unless you guys want to fire up the chat some more.
Both.
Who's going to run? Like, who in the Senate? It feels like there's nobody who wants that job right now. And that's a problem.
Because the Democratic folks, if you haven't been following the Democratic DNC and the Democratic Party's favorability, is the only thing that's lower. NBC did a poll. The only thing that's lower than the Democratic Party's favorability rating is support for this war.
Yep.
It's toxic. Which then goes. So Sam, you're seeing this, right? The Democratic Party is losing its base. I'm sure you saw the Axios reporting that came out 2 days ago that Ken Martin is almost on the outs. That they're running out of money. That he went back against the base and said he was going to.
Okay, back to you, Street Beater 07. Something I wanted to make sure I mentioned. AOC needs to run for Schumer's seat in 2028. She really shouldn't run for president. I really don't like her in 2028 for president. And actually, I don't really like her for president long term. I don't think she's executive material. I think she's talented, but I think she could be a great creature of Capitol Hill and really make a long-lasting, maybe be speaker someday. But no, I don't want her in the White House. I think we have better options. And if we don't have them now, we will have them soon enough. So Schumer's hopefully going to get supplanted by AOC.
Release the audit, but they didn't release the audit. Now, the strategy is, okay, we are winning despite all this. Why? Because people hate this mother effer Trump. He's radicalized the Latino base, he's radicalized young voters, he's radicalized independents. So I'm sure you've seen the Crypt Keeper, James Carville, give the advice, play possum. Just stay quiet. Give the white knight Gavin Newsom. Do not promise people anything on transformation. Don't take a risk. Prevent defense. Say nothing on ICE. Say nothing on APAC. Say give them nothing on housing. Give them nothing on healthcare. And then we'll just waltz our way and we'll win. We're winning all these elections anyway. So don't promise anything, Sam. Don't be bold. And inshallah, we'll win. Now, my fear is this. Suppose we have free and fair elections. Suppose it's an inshallah. They'll win. But if they still have the politics of old, which is the same politics that I've had for the past 10 years, vote for us, we're not Trump, then you have not just transformation, you have restoration. And you have restoration as everything is going worse. They're all taking money from Palantir, the oligarchy, I'm sure we've talked about on the left hook, Sherry Bustos, the XD CCC Democrat who is collecting money from Oracle and OpenAI. They're paying both sides. You see the right wing, Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene, be more progressive against AI than Democrats. You're seeing them say business as usual, take money from APAC, rein in ICE, not abolish ICE. My fear, Sam, is we've done the same thing for 10 years. It has failed. I would say it failed in 2016. I would say the only reason Biden won in 2022 was because of was a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. It failed in 2024. I think the only reason they're winning right now is because things are so bad. I fear that if they put this white knight Gavin Newsom, who pledges a restoration, I fear we're going to get our first Nazi president in 2032. Because in the polls, the youth, folks, the president future of the GOP is Nazi. All the polls show it. They're Nazi.
I think you're absolutely right. And I would go even further. First off, I would say in terms of James Carville, if we follow James Carville's advice, then Wisconsin has another Supreme Court election on April 7th.
Yep.
And it has the ability to have they don't have Democrat Republicans, but have a sort of like liberal majority for an extended period of time, maybe a decade, I think it is at that point. There was a swing election last April, and if we had listened to James Carville, that election would have never swung to Democrats or to the liberal candidate, and Wisconsin would be in a terrible shape right now. Carville had said basically, don't engage in that, don't pay attention, don't fight anything. I mean, and then here's the second part that people should understand: how you win is almost as important as winning, because you are creating a constituency that will, politicians, we like to think that politicians lie all the time, and they never do what they say. But the fact is that more often than not, politicians actually do what they say. And that is why what your constituency asks of a politician before they get elected is so important. And it's also why guys like Carville don't want that to be the case. I mean, we saw this in 2016. If you can go back and remember this. If you go back and remember the months between the convention when Donald Trump was nominated and the election day, Democrats, the most effective thing that Democrats could have done was to hold McConnell and Ryan accountable to Donald Trump.
Yep.
In other words, to say every time Donald Trump says something crazy, you immediately go, I want to hear Mitch McConnell denounce this. I want to hear Paul Ryan do this. And they did not do that. it was as if those two guys were on vacation and they were just gone. And the reason is Chuck Schumer, both famously said for every blue collar guy we lose in Pittsburgh, we're going to get 2 white collars in the suburbs. And that was their way. The reason why they left, they didn't attack Ryan and McConnell, is because they wanted those sort of like drifting Republican voters. They thought they were gettable. And it turns out they weren't. I mean, Republicans want their tax cuts. They want their tax cuts, and they're willing to put up with whatever it is that they're going to put up. But they wanted to maintain, they wanted that constituency. Chuck Schumer also famously said he was going to do a deal. Says, I've got Ryan, I've got Schumer, he referred to himself in third person, and I've got Clinton, and we're going to do a deal for infrastructure, and we're going to repatriate all of these foreign held profits by American companies. George Bush did the same thing, did a discount tax rate. They came back, they cut jobs. That was the 2005 American Jobs Act. Schumer wanted to maintain, Clinton wanted to maintain a certain constituency because it's going to give them latitude when they govern. And so a guy like Carville, he doesn't want the Democrats to sign on to anything because essentially he wants to make sure that we don't have the same problem that we had under Biden, which was increased antitrust, increased power of labor, because fundamentally those cut into corporate power. Were it not for Gaza, and had he kept his pledge to just
Carville played a major role in making the Democrats unable to function as an opposition party. Yeah, if you've watched my recent episodes, you know that I'm going after Clinton's legacy in a big way. And James Carville was instrumental in crafting that legacy. And it is a legacy of conservative capitulation. The person that ruined the Democratic Party and is responsible for the dysfunction that defines the Democratic Party today is mostly Bill Clinton, who turned the party of FDR into the party of Bill Clinton. So that message needs to get out more. Having a hard time understanding why they're pushing AI so intensely. It's like we're being forced to accept it into our daily lives, even though a portion of the masses don't want it. Yeah, no one is really, that I know, is pro AI. Everybody that I know is scared to death of AI. It's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy political win, regardless of whether or not AI can really help our country. It's just too dangerous. People don't trust it. There needs to be more transparency into what the hell it is and what kind of effect it's going to have on our society.
Served one term. Joe Biden would have been the best president of my lifetime.
He was on a roll, Sam. He was on a roll. He evolved on the crime bill. He evolved on economic policy. He was the progressive.
Listen, the bottom line is Joe Biden knew what the middle of the Democratic Party was, and it was because of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren representing probably more than half of the Democratic Party, frankly, at that point. He knew he needed them to be on board for anything to happen in the administration. That's why labor was strong, because Bernie got to put all his people in there, and antitrust was strong. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the FTC, the antitrust and DOJ was because Warren was basically, they were given those portfolios. And that's when the best stuff happened under the Biden administration. And Carville doesn't, like, Carville types, I think Carville actually, if I remember now correctly, Carville, I think, is has a consultancy with Palantir.
Of course.
I think that's the case. People can double check me on that. But
they want the system as is, Sam. I mean, you saw, and I've seen them all. They're so threatened by the emergence of the woke, the emergence of progressives, the emergence of, an anti-1%, anti-oligarchy message. I don't know if you saw that. I think that piece came out in the New York Times. Third Way did that piece, the interview in the New York Times. The abundance folks, the Ezra, I call him what not the Ezra, who's the other guy? Ezra Iglesias, pundit class. These are the folks who my fear, Sam, is they would rather burn it all down than actually embrace reform. They would actually burn it all down than actually have their nest just temporarily disrupted, right? People like the Carvilles and others. They want the money from the Oracles. They want the money from the Palantirs. At the end of the day, you've been in this game a long time. I've been in this game a long time. I always tell people it's a big club. They go to the same churches, same golf clubs, same synagogues. At MSNBC and CNN, they're all buddies. They go to the same parties. They sleep with each other. They marry each other. They cheat on each other. It's kind of like the same big old club. And what they really fear is a type of transformation, a transformational politics, which is the mood in the air, which would require taxing the rich, which would require, abolishing ICE, which would require, saying F you APAC, which would require no new wars, which would require not taking money from, AI and crypto. But they don't want to do that, Sam. So instead, for the past 10 years, what they'll do is try to sabotage the left, progressives. They use the word as a pejorative against the rest of us, even though all the polls, Perry Bacon, I think it was yesterday, the New Republic, showed that as much as these groups keep talking about, the Democratic base is actually moderate and we should go centrist, all the polls show that all the liberal and progressive policies, Sam, are the ones that motivate people. And you can even win over these mythical whites, these centrists, these Rust Belt whites that Chuck Schumer loved. You don't win them over through Liz Cheney. You win them over by promising accountability and affordability. What did I miss?
Nothing. And I think there was those focus groups in the Times the other day where they said they had taken a wide range of voters and said the question was something to the effect of, like, would you prefer a moderate or progressive? And 100%.
All 13 of them.
All 13 said the progressive. I mean, yeah, I think that's true. And there's Kevin Drum, the late Kevin Drum, who was at Washington Monthly and had a blog back in the day. He had this concept, maybe he had borrowed it from somewhere else, but I remember it from him, the iron law of institutions, which is that people who run institutions would rather have less power for the institution as long as they can maintain their power within it. And, I think that's an impulse of a lot of people. People go into politics, not all people, but a lot of people go into politics. They go in because they want power. And
that's why I'd go into politics. Unlike, this is actually something hopefully you can fire me up in the chat if you guys are interested in this, but I won't spend too much time on it. There is in traditional storytelling this idea that power is best laid in the hands of people who don't want it, as opposed to people who do want it, because people who do want power are automatically morally nefarious. And I just don't think that's true. I think if you're well educated, I think if you come from a good upbringing, you had early life experiences that endow you with empathy, then an empathetic worldview, then you can seek power and do good things with it. I mean, FDR sought power from the very beginning, and he did a lot of good things with it. Teddy Roosevelt, the same deal. JFK, after his brother died, was basically like, okay, I'm the heir to this family's political presence, and I'm going to do the best I can with it. And he did, until they fucking shot him.
And if they have the power, they want to maintain the power. And if there's a 90% chance that it's going to hurt the institution for you to maintain power, but a 10% chance that you can maintain power and help the institution, they're going to bet on the 10%
Right.
because their own interests, self-interest help. I mean, look, this has been one of the biggest problems that Democrats have had in terms of campaigns. It's why, like, you can see Mamdani won and Cuomo did. It was a perfect illustration of like the fight between the Democratic Party. And now, granted, it is in New York, but it all holds. I mean, Andrew Cuomo, Mario Cuomo was considered a god here. Andrew Cuomo was governor for 2 terms. I mean, this is what you can see in their campaigning styles. It tells a big story. Democratic consultants, and I've had conversations with Republican consultants who have told me these things, actually, that when they sit down with their Democratic counterparts, they're just sort of shocked about the way that Democrats consultants work versus Republicans. And I'm not saying the Republicans are perfect on this, but Democratic consultants, they will always defer to things like TV and media buys because they get 15% of every dollar that's spent on it. They get a cut. And it's existed for a long time. And so, I mean, that's why for years and years we would hear Texas is going blue, Texas is going blue. And part of that was because there were a lot of consultants who had a lot of money to be made in these massive media markets in Texas. And if money comes in, it's going to get spent on ads and this and that.
Yep.
A candidate like Mamdani, who was able to get matching funds, and so he could pay for infrastructure. But there is no, for a consultant to say, what you really need is a ground game. You need to build volunteers. You need to do this. They have less of an incentive, financial incentive, frankly, to do this. I mean, and that's just the reality of it. And so the nature of the campaign is also very indicative of the world in which the candidate sort of swims. So one that is like more needs bigger dollar donors because their consultants are also from that same sort of like corporate mentality. Like, you need big dollar donors because you need more money because you need to buy television ads. And the more money that goes into television ads, the more money goes into those consultant pockets. If it's you need money to pay for people to organize volunteers, they don't get a vig of that. And so, what's that old saying? The hardest thing to do is to convince a man that they're wrong about something they're already getting paid for, or something to that effect.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. It all goes back to the money, and that explains the PACs, the funding. Well, not just the money, folks, but the ideology also, but the money, right? If you adapt, if you go to the bases, if you go grassroots, if you go against the oligarchy, if you want change, if you want to tax the rich, that fundamentally hurts the bottom line of the incestuous remoras that are now hanging on to the carcass of the DNC. And so one of those, in my opinion, the carcass, is a Chuck Schumer. I also think it's Hakeem Jeffries. The problem, though, is they're literally dragging down not just the party, but when we need an opposition party, Sam. Because look, Sam, to be honest, I have no fidelity.
I'm fine with it. There's a creative solution to wealth and income inequality that needs to take place on a federal level, because that's where a majority of people's taxes go. So, I'm glad Mamdani's. I mean, he's going to follow through on his campaign promises. He's made it very clear that he's going to do that. But there's other ways to solve those problems. But it needs to happen on a federal level, which means you need to deal with the pendulum swings. Pendulum swinging, guys. Have confidence. I think we're going to be okay with these elections. I think they're going to happen. I think we're going to destroy the Republican Party over the next, hopefully, 40 years, because that's how long it's going to take.
To any politician. I don't adulate them. I never have. I never will. To me, they're all tools.
Yep.
Clearly, it's obvious to anyone. I do not vote Republican because I see him as an existential threat to our democracy. I think they're fascist. I used the F word before most people did. I said they were right-wing authoritarian, racist, and I said they would go Nazi by 2025. Latest polls show, folks, a majority of Republican youth are Holocaust deniers. You saw the latest leak, Sam, which is all the leaks are the same when it comes to their social media text. They love Hitler. They want to throw us all into gas ovens. They imagine the most disgusting, violent type of torture against us. They love the N-word. Very racist, very misogynist, very anti-Semitic. So you need a bold opposition party. And I was told, Sam, last year, I remember, seeing the Democrats, We need a liberal Joe Rogan. We need these alpha bros. So who they have after Donald Trump's State of the Union? Centrist Elissa Slotkin. The only thing I remember from her speech was she praised Reagan. All right. Then you fast forward. We need more centrists. We need more moderates. Waj, we need centrists. Waj, we got to have a centrist. You need centrists to win. And sure, the centrists will vote for APAC, and the centrists will vote for the SAVE Act, and the centrists will vote for funding DHS even after they kill the Renee Nicole Good. And the centrists might be against abortion rights. But Waj, we need centrists. Yeah. And I say, Sam, now, I don't think we need a quote-unquote centrist or moderate. I think the difference between a moderate and a centrist and a Republican is what? Maybe just the D versus the R. We don't need Vichy Democrats. Everything that I've seen so far shows me that if you actually ran a populist, every place, but if you ran like a populist candidate, you can win over these mythical whites that Schumer and Harris wanted, right? The Liz Cheney whites. And these centrists, if they're voting for the SAVE Act, Henry Cuellar. If they're voting to fund ICE after ICE killed Renee Nicole Good, Henry Cuellar. If they're voting to give Donald Trump no restraints on his war, Henry Cuellar. And then the next day after that vote just happened last week, what did Donald Trump say? Chivas next. Sam, why do we need centrists? Because I'm sure you've heard this from Democrats as well. Lodge, no, we need them. I'd rather have a centrist than a Republican. There's no other way for us to pick up some of these seats, and we need a mansion and a cinema. Why, Sam?
Look, the theory is that the centrist is going to win in these areas, and I'm sorry, the theory just is not playing out. This is what we were told about. I think her name was Sarah Gideon in the race against Susan Collins, and this is what we were told about Janet Mills. From the Democratic establishment. Look, there are things that I may not agree with a guy like Graham Plattner. Like, he is much more gun-centric than I might be. He lives in Maine. It's a local issue there. But the fact of the matter is that his appeal to labor, his appeal to working class politics, his notion that we have an oligarchy and we have too much corporate power, that appeals across the board. If you look at the latest polling, he's polling now from Republicans and centrists and independents in the primary. He's doing this in the primary. Like he's
Even with the scandal, Sam.
Both to the left of Mills and attracting Republicans and independents. And make no mistake, I hope people know. I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts. I know what Maine is like. It's like Paul LePage was their governor. That dude had sovereign citizens come in and tell him that he can assassinate the members of the Maine Senate if they don't agree with him. And he had to have his lawyers intercede to say, like, Paul, you can't do that. Wow. These people are crazy. And he was governor. He may end up being one of the Congress people from Maine. So, it's happened in New York. It's going to happen in Maine. I think there's a decent chance, like one of the sleeper races in Nebraska, Dan Osborne, he is not a Democrat because, again, you mentioned earlier, the Democratic brand is a disaster. John Tester from Montana said, I wouldn't encourage anybody to run as a Democrat anymore because the Democratic brand is just horrible. But you can run on politics that a Democrat, like an FDR Democrat had, and you could do well. There's two sort of dimensions to this. One is there is a set of politics in the Democratic Party. People who entered into politics and learned the lesson of McGovern and came into politics around the time that Bill Clinton did, which is anachronistic now. Those politics don't exist. The idea of triangulation and the idea that Democrats need to move to the right,
yes.
they don't understand the partisan nature of politics. Now, I will say, there are Democrats who ideologically I don't necessarily agree with, but from a partisan standpoint, they understand that they're fighting Republicans and they've got to fight Republicans. Like Jasmine Crockett, she has a lot of politics that I don't, material politics that I wouldn't necessarily subscribe to. I'm not saying that Talarico is significantly better, but she knew how to do partisan politics. She knew how to do partisan politics. Now, she didn't have much of a ground game. I think in Texas, from where I understand, she came in late, et cetera, all those other issues.
Also didn't do policy.
Or even, there are others that escape me at the moment that understand partisan politics. Then there's another filter where...
Remember, guys, the big three. Politics is Star Wars, policy is Star Trek, political marketing is either Jurassic Park or Inception. You got to either kill dinosaurs or light the bulb inside people's brain to get them to see that there is a better way, a third rail, one not defined by GDP, greed-driven policy, which is what has driven both parties for the last 45 years.
People are beginning to understand the material concerns of Americans and to understand, this is not going away. We have structural problems in this country. We have such incredible wealth inequality that, frankly, taxation alone is not going to take care of it. I mean, I think, what Bernie Sanders did was come out with this wealth tax as a way of, in many respects, it's like signing on to single-payer healthcare. A lot of Democrats have now adopted that because it's the most obvious thing to do, and we've seen the deficiencies in the Affordable Care Act, and they come mostly in terms of private insurance providing insurance. We don't need private insurance. What Bernie wants to do is create a wealth tax as a litmus test for candidates, and because it gives you a good sense of are they willing to say no to the crypto money? Are they willing to say no to people who have $100 million, $200 million, $500 million or more for that matter? But we also need structural things that make it impossible to accumulate that kind of wealth.
That's right.
On the front end. So it's not just a question of taxation. And there's a smaller subset of Democratic politicians who understand those sets of policies, but they need to be able to work with partisan Democrats who understand that the Republicans are bad. I mean, the biggest problem, everything went south for Joe Biden following the passage of the American Rescue Act. Do you remember what Republicans were talking about? The largest bill ever passed in American history, the American Rescue Act. It cut child poverty in half over the course of the next 18 months. Child poverty was cut in half in this country. The greatest anti-poverty bill that we've ever seen. It kept millions of people on their health insurance. It wasn't done in the most efficient way because Nancy Pelosi did not want Medicare, expand Medicare, so that we paid for COBRA, which was a completely inefficient way to do it. But nevertheless, so you had all these great things that came from the American Rescue Act. Do you remember what Republicans were saying following it? They were completely enraged that there were two Dr. Seuss books that went out of print.
Right.
That was the only thing they were talking about. And so Joe Biden, and at this point, people forget this. Joe Manchin, Bernie Sanders was saying, we're going to do Build Back Better, and it's going to be $4 or $5 trillion. And Joe Manchin goes, I think we should do $6 trillion, because Joe Manchin's a fucking idiot, and he didn't. He was just going with the flow. When Joe Biden then said, "Whoa, we got to slow down. We're going to let the Republicans make a proposal because I want to bring the Republicans in because he thought the fever had broken," and that dicking around cost 2 months. And then he let Kristen Sinema and Rob Portman come in to make their proposal, which ultimately is what we got. The bill got split apart. But during that time, people might remember this too. I think it was The Intercept came out with audio of Joe Manchin and a phone call that he was having with donors who were basically like, no, we're not going to do this bill back. And so Joe Manchin then
comes back,
went from a guy who said it should be more, we should be paying, we should have a bigger bill than Bernie Sanders, went to the guy who, along with Kristen Sinema, killed the bill because Joe Biden, I mean, that bill should have been voted on in September of 2021.
They had all the momentum. And it was
had all the momentum, but they hit the brakes. In the most cynical way, it would be that because Joe Biden knew that the Republicans would kill it. I actually think it was just like a reflexive response to sort of like the politics he grew up with on some level, and said, the American public wants to see us working together. And the American public cared about that. The American public wants stuff to be delivered to them, and they don't care. They're not worried about the process. You give me single payer healthcare, I don't give a shit if it gets every single Republican vote or no Republican votes. If you give me paid leave, you give me parental leave, you give me sick days, you give me support for in nursing homes when I get older. I mean, I don't care if every Republican votes for it or every Republican votes against it. I want the material benefits. And I'm going to look at it and go, like, this is great that I have, a $20 copay whenever I have a doctor, and that's it. And that's my only expense. But it doesn't feel good because Lindsey Graham voted against it, and I can't enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes to show, and you see this happening with Schumer, where he loves the backroom deals. He's more comfortable bear-hugging Marco Rubio and Netanyahu than he is Mamdani. They want to get back into the room, slap each other on the backs, have the brandy, and do business as usual. But these people aren't built for this moment, Sam. They're not made for this fight. They're not made for it because it's not. We're dealing with Nazis, folks. These people love Nazis. Yes. Jake Lang is a Nazi. Andy Ogles, who said that America should get rid of Muslims yesterday, you know, he defended Nazi Jake Lang, who was a January 6th insurrectionist, who was pardoned by Trump, and then had a protest at Mamdani's house, and now that's becoming a site of violence. I don't know if you saw today that they found another bomb around that Gracie Mansion. They're sniffing. They have bomb sniffers there. So they want to kill. They literally want to kill the rest of us. And meanwhile, we have these antiquated fossils who are more beholden to the old way of things, which feathers their nest. But Sam, fantastic conversation. Thank you, sir, for joining us in this live. Don't listen to me. Listen to Sam. Oh, actually, I want to ask you this one quick question before I go, because I haven't shared this with you. I'm kind of developing a litmus test for Democrats moving forward. This is the floor, not the ceiling, meaning this does not encompass everything I want them to do. But I think this is a litmus test, meaning if you're a Democrat who doesn't support this, I don't see how you can lead the party and where the people are. But I want your thoughts on this.
Abolish ICE, abolish APAC, prosecute MAGA, no more foreign interventionism.
One of them is you have to be mentioning affordability and accountability, both with specifics. If you're not giving specifics on affordability and accountability, you're not the fighter for this moment. Number two, no specific order. You have to embrace abolishing ICE. I think anything less, the people aren't with you. Number three, I don't have any faith in you saying that you'll defend American democracy against fascists if you still support fascists and genocide abroad, specifically when it comes to Netanyahu. Number four, you have to be in some way, shape, or form against the liberal oligarchy. Baseline, you have to support taxing the rich, the 1%. And then number five, I'm going to be paying attention to who you throw under the bus. And this is where it gets to Newsom. If you can throw transgender kids under the bus and then casually throw...
So this is where I want people to get aggressive with the insults. No more arguing with them. They are beyond the realm of cogent argument. We are at war. They're waging war on us. We have no choice but to counterattack, and we can counterattack by way of the politics of social exclusion. This is what I'm talking about. Punishment for MAGA. It's not good enough to just beat them at the polls. We need to beat them at the polls and in our culture, in our society, in our cities, in our suburban areas for the next 40 years. This is a war on white trash fascism. So take the insults and throw them right back at them. Call them white trash fascists. Call them Nazis. Call them ignorant, uneducated, stupid, dumb jock, idiots, bullies, and cowards. Because that's what they are. You don't fix the wound by not looking at it. You got to see how ugly these people are. They are ugly on the inside and ugly on the outside. These people are all, usually really overweight, don't take care of themselves. The best days in life they think are behind them. They're sad people, but we can't help them. And they're tearing down our country. So, yeah, boo-looking. Yeah, I prefer Confederate flag-waving, Bible-beating gun nuts. That's the thing. If you guys haven't seen my essays, Who Are MAGA, please do so. Because I think it's specific. I think it's important to get specific about who are the MAGA trash motherfuckers that are backing Trump still to this day. And if you define them as Confederate flag-waving, Bible-beating gun nuts manipulated by heartless one-percenters, then you got yourself a nice specific target. You have to be specific with your goals. You have to be specific with a lot of things in life. Okay, I learned about specificity within the context of storytelling. It's true in all forms of communication. Have specific goals for things. In this case, have a specific enemy. Confederate flag waving, Bible beating, gun nuts, heartless one percenters. Those 3 Venn diagrams all overlapping.
Documented immigrants on the bus. I know you're gonna throw me under the bus. So you can't really throw any of us under the bus. It has to be affordability for all. Those are my 5. That's my litmus test, Sam. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's great. And I would say, I can't remember which one it was, but in terms of taxing the rich, the Bernie wealth tax is a great sort of litmus test for this because, everybody can say like, oh, the rich need to pay their fair share. This is something that like, Bill Clinton would espouse and whatnot. But a wealth tax means that you are not afraid to basically say it is fundamentally unhealthy for a society and unsustainable for society to have this type of wealth disparity. And it's just a fact. I mean, it is unsustainable to have this type of wealth disparity because it leads to a political power disparity. And we see it every single day. And so I would add that. And I would just add one more thing to the Gavin Newsom assessment. He also recently, and I think maybe it was in that same Pod Save interview, said like, I've been guilty too of like getting culturally out of touch with America and going too far, not being normal. I think
He said normal. That was I think that was a CNN interview. That was the week before the pod.
Okay, I think you're right. It was
He's getting culturally normal now.
Okay. Do you remember what he said as an example of what he felt was not normal? That he was too far out in front of?
What was the pronouns?
It was marriage equality.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
That was his way of proving that he was normal. And I'm sorry, like, first off, aside from just as a first order issue, like you cannot throw human rights under the bus. Okay, whether it's trans rights, whether it's marriage equality rights, whether it's being against Islamophobia or anti-Semitism, or against Black Lives, believing Black Lives Matter. You can't be, as a first order, you can't be against human rights. But as a political matter, the fact of the matter is that like the vast majority of people, this is not abnormal. This stuff is not abnormal. You're spending too much time on a podcast with Charlie Kirk, or who, incidentally, I will say, 10 years ago, was traveling around TPUSA with a gay Republican until the Groypers came and started attacking him for it. And Charlie Kirk moved to the right as it went on. And so, it became more revanchist and fascistic and et cetera. The fact of the matter is that 50% plus one, I don't know how far up, but it's definitely above 50%. I think it's perfectly normal to just let people live their lives. And that's it. And so that he has this mentality. The way I project that I'm normal is to throw people, marginalized people, or people who traditionally hadn't had the same rights, or who may be different from, you sitting in your white enclave, to throw them under the bus. I think it's very, very problematic.
And folks, he's done that for the past year, and I've been.
Street Bear 07 MVP of the day. I fell out with my cousin this morning for his rhetoric about Trump and how ungreat they are for the country. I'm sick of it. You earned a sub, McBiz. I'm fired up. Good. Yeah, it seems like people respond to my anger and borderline rage. I don't know if it's something I should tap more into. Fire up the chat. We're coming in here for the last couple minutes. And if you have any constructive thoughts on how I might shape the show a little bit better to get more subs and get a little bit more popularity and exposure, please.
Telling people I'm from California.
I am all ears for the constructive criticism.
If he can so quickly throw transgender students under the bus, he will throw you under the bus.
Yeah.
He goes where the wind is blowing. He's not the person for
okay, we'll wrap it up. So that's, they're going to finish up with some comments on Gavin Newsom and so forth. And I just don't really care. I go after Newsom all the time. He's not popular in California. He's popular nationwide. And he's not even that popular because people just haven't done their homework. We'll talk more about 2028 presidential nominations at some point. But for now, that was a great little survey of understanding the Latino vote, what's wrong with the Democratic Party, and starting off the show with some comments on Israeli savagery. Anger is a very appropriate response to fascism. Yes, Stat Pat and I have said on Left Coast Live for a couple years now, anger is a completely appropriate response to injustice, unfairness, and inequality. It is what you do with that anger that matters most. How do you use that? Athletes use it in their performance all the time. Specifically, athletes who play defense in their sports love to use their anger to hustle harder. Street Beater 07, we need to support McBiz aggressively and don't let up. Thank you, Street Beater 07. If you haven't checked out my essays, please do so. They are the work of which I am most proud. I've got some more stuff for the essays coming up. What's wrong with the establishment left? The progressive offensive, the Dieter debt solution, which is an exciting piece of content that's going to be down the road. Please stay tuned to me from now until the 4th. It's going to be crazy. All right, until next time, I am Dieter McBusiness. I will see you for a Monday nooner next. And I'm reminding you, as always, that you don't get change in America by asking nicely. Thank you for staying tuned. Please like, share, and subscribe.